How do you see that this policy of sanctions, of using sanctions against people, will develop in the next, let's say, next years or in the coming time?
It's generally recognized, I think, among people who are honest with themselves and with the facts, that sanctions don't work for the intentions that are expressed for the sanctions, that is, to bring down the government. I can't recall any government that was ever brought down because of sanctions. All it does is help to destroy the economy of the country, the lives of the people, mainly the poor people. It hits hardest on the poor people in terms of their medicine, education, food, economy, everything. And that's basically, as far as I can tell, the purpose of sanctions is to destroy a country as an object lesson to other countries. Don't you do this. But there's an interesting consequence. It works with when a big country sanctions a small country.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the desired effect of destroying the country and becoming an object lesson in such cases. But if you do it too much, then all of a sudden strange things start to happen. And I wrote about this more than 3 years ago, because sanctions are double-edged. If the United States places sanctions on Syria, it's the same thing as if Syria places sanctions on the United States.
How it is?
That is to say that there is no commerce between the two countries. Okay?
Okay.
So now obviously the impact of Syria sanctioning the United States is very small on the United States because it's a small country and the United States is huge. And other countries are not going to join Syria in doing this. But it works the other way. Now, if you use it too much, what happens? What happens is that Iran, a sanctioned country, begins to deliver oil to Venezuela, another sanctioned country, and all the sanctioned countries begin to develop a new economy amongst themselves. Syria has an economic relationship with Iran as well. But of course, Syria is in a special situation because they not only have the sanctions against them, they also have the American military sitting on their primary source of
the eastern borders.
The oil fields in the northwest,
yes.
Northeast, and also their key agricultural exports of grain and wheat and so forth from the Euphrates area. So it's a double effort in that case. But coming back to the sanctions, the sanctions are a double-edged sword because now we see how other countries are beginning to say, do I want to rely too much on the United States? Even Saudi Arabia is now accepting payment from China in yuan and not dollars. And Russia, when the United States decided to sanction Russia, it destroyed the European economies, but it did not destroy the Russian economy. And Russia is in the middle of a major war, which it is winning, and the United States and NATO is losing. Mm-hmm. So this is how the double-edged sword finally comes home when sanctions no longer are effective because you use them too much.
So you think that the economic sanctions against Russia affected the U.S. Economic sanctions against Russia affected the European Union?
Yes, well, they did more than that. I mean, they did this. What they did to Europe, in addition to, they didn't impose sanctions. The United States didn't impose sanctions on Europe, but they did to Europe a similar thing as to what they did in Syria by cutting off their gas supply from Russia, by destroying their gas supply from Russia. So that essentially made the Ukrainian war worthwhile from the US point of view, because it destroyed a major competitor of the United States, which is the European Union. So the United States actually benefits from losing, if you like, because I'm pretty sure that they're going to, in effect, lose the Ukrainian war. But from their point of view, they won because they destroyed Europe as a competitor. And the United States will benefit from that.
So even if the offensive that is now, they are saying, the Western media is saying now that there is a new offensive in Ukraine that might change the situation in regarding to the position of the Western powers. Even if this happens, you think that Europe will still be losing from the Ukrainian war?
Yeah, I don't see how Europe is going to recover unless they declare their independence from the United States and NATO, and they send, if they dissolve NATO and develop an independent policy towards other independent countries like Russia and Iran and so forth. And I don't see the benefit for them in staying with NATO and maintaining this so-called alliance with the United States.
Do you think that the European countries might be able to do this now after the war?
I do, because I don't see that the United States has much military power to compel, especially all of Europe, to do this. They can't even manufacture enough artillery shells for the Ukrainians to keep up their military effort against Russia. They can't maintain enough missiles or any of the armaments that...
Why do you think this? It was surprising that the war machine in the United States, from a single war with Russia, and it's not a direct war, of course, it's a proxy, if you can say, that war, using the Ukrainian army as proxy to fight Russia, and they weren't able to withstand this stance of manufacturing weapons to keep up with the war machine that is going on, and they are borrowing weapons now. That's
correct. And they can't even find weapons to borrow anymore. It's, the United States, to the extent that it has a war machine, it's oriented towards air power and sea power. And this is a land war in Ukraine. I frankly don't give a lot of credit to the strength of American sea power or air power either, for that matter, because they have high quality weapons, but not the quantity that other nations have. But in the case of a land war, they're hopeless. They don't have the tanks, they don't have the artillery, they're completely unprepared for a land war. So this war is going to go away. They're taking a desperate last-minute effort to try to get some kind of troops together, presumably in Romania or someplace like that, and to send some weapons over. But Russia has blocked that. And in this case, I have to think that the West is trying to make sure that people don't see what is actually going on, and the news that I see on the mainstream news from the U.S. It's a fantasy. But the result is that the Ukrainian war, I think, is going to wind down very quickly now. It's and the United States and NATO are just going to have to get out of the way, as they say. And the result will be that just like Afghanistan, when the United States removed its troops from Afghanistan.
After 20 years.
Yeah, after 20 years in Afghanistan, and there was argument not about removing the troops, but about how the troops were removed. Okay, so in this case, I think in the case of Ukraine, there may be some discussion of that kind, but I actually think it's more likely that the United States will pivot, will instruct the media essentially not to report on the Ukraine anymore, and to move to more important considerations such as Taiwan and China, and this probably.
How do you think that the sanctions will affect the people of the United States and also the economy and politics of the United States?
Well, one principle is that, as I mentioned earlier about the double-edged sword, is that the U.S. will suffer in any relationship where they suspend economic relations with another country, because they won't have the goods and services with that other country, and they won't be able to sell anything to that other country. But one of the important centers of commerce and an important world economy was the European Union. I say was the European Union because I'm not so sure it is anymore. And the European Union was a prisoner of NATO. They were heavily invested in NATO from a strategic point of view. But NATO, what is NATO going to do? Its purpose was to threaten the Russian Federation, and they've done that, and the result is unfortunately not to their advantage. So in this case, what does the United States get out of it? Well, if NATO is obsolete, then it's going to disappear. But NATO became relevant by a single act in this war, and that was the destruction of the gas pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, from Russia to Germany. And that essentially destroyed the European economy, which was very productive from the United States point of view, because even now, German factories are closing and they're selling, they're up for sale. And the way they're up for sale is to reinvest in another country. What other country? The United States. Mm-hmm. The United States can provide the infrastructure needed and the fuel needed to operate the factories. So there are going to be a lot of unemployed Germans, but the German factories will set up business in the United States and recover the profits.
I guess this was the main problem that Scholz and Macron had with the green economic plan of Biden. They were afraid that it will shift all the industries from Europe to the States to benefit from the new facilitations for the industry.
Exactly, but the United States found a way to force the issue.